Breaking tonight, the state of emergency in South Carolina as a new tropical threat takes aim at the East Coast. Parts of the southeast bracing for this potential tropical cyclone. The storm already carving a deadly path in the Caribbean with new watches and warnings just issued. Bill Cairns with the new track and potential landfall in the Carolinas as Hurricane Umberto intensifies into a Category 3. Plus, wild weather in Arizona turning streets into rivers and dropping hail the size of golf balls. Also breaking tonight, former FBI Director James Comey indicted as President Trump threatens more prosecutions to come. We'll take you inside the grand jury room and the case that a new U.S. attorney with no prosecution experience will take to trial. New clashes over ICE detentions, the standoff in Chicago, and this violent video of an ICE officer throwing a woman to the ground. That officer now placed on leave. My sit-down with the president of Iran. We ask him about new satellite photos alleging a new secret nuclear site being built, but how Iran is preparing potentially for another war. The stunning diagnosis for the Park Avenue shooter, what a medical examiner is now saying about his brain months after he targeted NFL headquarters. Outrage in Indiana after parents say their daughter was left with severe burns after a high school dance practice. What happened? And dropping in 22 stories above ground. Meet the 50-year-old skateboarder breaking world records as he plunges off a ramp built into the side of a building. Plus, our new exclusive reporting, the U.S. now preparing options for military strikes on drug targets inside of Venezuela. What we're learning. Top story starts right now. And good evening. We do begin tonight with the deadly double threat in the tropics and the state of emergency just issued here in the U.S. as one storm eyes a U.S. landfall within just days. Video tonight showing rescuers wading through rushing floodwaters in the D.R. after heavy rain slammed the Caribbean, killing one person after a bridge collapsed. New watches and warnings just announced for the Bahamas. And right now, Hurricane Umberto intensifying into a major Cat 3 storm. It's expected to strengthen even more over the weekend. The governor of South Carolina issuing a state of emergency just moments ago over major concerns for widespread flooding. We'll have the latest on the track and timing in a all this as flash flooding and dangerous hail slams the southwest, streets underwater in Phoenix, and golf ball-sized hail pelting parts of Peoria. That wild weather forcing hundreds of flight delays. NBC meteorologist Bill Cairns, you know he's standing by for us. He's tracking everything tonight and joins us live. Bill, let's talk about the tropics.
Yeah, we're going to focus not on Umberto too much because that's not going to influence really any land areas. This, which is our potential tropical cyclone, is the main show. And this one is now projected to be somewhere near the South Carolina coast come Monday night or Tuesday. So that means everyone there needs to prepare this weekend for a tropical system. That means heavy rains, the possibility of power outages, and maybe even some storm surge. But it is not etched in stone. There's going to be some significant changes to this forecast. That's almost guaranteed. So right now it's just weak. It's not even really a system yet. But because it's so close to the Bahamas, that's why they wanted to issue it to give them a heads up that this weekend they're going to be dealing likely with Tropical Storm Melda, the I-named storm. And then we're going to take it Sunday afternoon to the northern Bahamas. That's when it will make its closest approach. As of now, it looks to be far enough away from Miami, West Palm Beach, heading up there all the way to Melbourne, Daytona Beach, to Jacksonville. Far enough away that you should only have rough seas, rip currents, dangerous waves. No rain, no precipitation from the storm. By the time it gets here on Monday, Hurricane Center has it becoming a Category 1 hurricane. And then they even say, by the time we get to Monday night and Tuesday, they're not sure exactly where it's going to be. There's a lot of disagreement. And let me explain why. So here's our computer squiggly lines. These are our American, what we call our ensemble models. We call them spaghetti plots if you want. But these are all different possibilities. Notice all the red L's. That's where the center of it would be. They're all heading north. Pretty uniform. Some are faster, some are slower. The faster ones get to the South Carolina coast. The other ones start to head out to sea because of Umberto. That's when it's going to be at its closest to Imelda, Tuesday. We're going to have two hurricanes within a close proximity, and Umberto is going to kind of pull all of this back out to the ocean. So if it's a slower track, that's great news for the southeast coast because likely it would come up here, stall, and then head out to sea. But if it moves faster this weekend, it could make it to the southeast coast before it gets pulled back, and then we could deal with the problem with rain, Tom, especially. Right now, it looks like we're guaranteed a very heavy rainfall event. There is a drought, So it's not going to be like as horrible as it could be, but with still 7 inches of rain in some areas, we're going to have flooding.
All right, then let's go to the other side of the map right now, and that severe weather we were seeing in Arizona. What's happening in the Southwest?
Yeah, we were just showing you those pictures, and we can throw them back up again, too. So we've been dealing with, isolated flash flooding. We get this in the desert areas. They've been having thunderstorms, sometimes as much as 2 inches of rain per hour, rainfall rates, and they just can't handle it. They're just not used to getting even rain like this. We've had hail, a lot of flash flooding, vehicles getting trapped, too. So we'll keep you posted on anything else developing there in the Southwest.
All right, Bill Cairns for Bill, we thank you. We want to turn now to those criminal charges that rocked the political world last night. President Trump today celebrating the indictment of his former FBI director, James Comey, and suggesting there are more prosecutions to come while Comey insists he's innocent. NBC's Laura Jarrett has more on that and what happened inside the grand jury room.
Facing accusations he's carrying out a retaliation campaign after a federal grand jury indicted former FBI Director James Comey, President Trump today digging in.
It's about justice, really. It's not revenge. You can't let this go on. He's a dirty cop.
The president also suggesting the Justice Department's work may not be over when asked who's next on his list of targets for prosecution.
It's not a list, but I think there'll be others. These were corrupt, radical left Democrats. There'll be others. Look, that's my opinion.
Today, top Justice Department officials publicly defending the Comey indictment.
The FBI didn't just make up this charge. This is very serious conduct, and that's why we investigated it.
The former FBI director maintaining his innocence, now facing criminal charges notably not related to the FBI's controversial opening of an investigation into the Trump campaign's dealings with Russia ahead of the 2016 election, the issue that has long defined his fraught relationship with the president and led to his abrupt firing.
I was going to fire Comey, knowing there was no good time to do it. I said to myself, I said, this Russia thing with Trump and Russia is a made-up story.
Instead, Comey indicted on 2 counts, obstruction and lying to Congress, for allegedly authorizing a leak to the press about the Clinton Foundation years earlier. The grand jury failing to indict him on an additional charge of lying to Congress.
My family and I have known for years that there are costs.
Additional charge of lying to
Donald Trump. We will not live on our knees, and you shouldn't either. And I'm innocent. So let's have a trial.
The indictment bare bones and soon likely tested in court. A source familiar with the grand jury proceedings telling NBC News interim U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan, Trump's one-time personal attorney, presented the Comey case herself Thursday. A rare move for a U.S. attorney, especially one with no experience as a prosecutor. But the president's own words could pose a significant obstacle to the case. His lengthy record of name-calling and accusations against Comey, now potential fodder for Comey's defense.
Laura joins us now and said, and Laura, there's something else that is unique about this case, something called the rocket docket. This could have trial in 70 days. Explain.
Yeah, it's part of what makes it so unusual, Tom, is because usually people think about the defense team trying to slow things down, trying to get bogged down in discovery so that you don't actually have to go to trial. Whereas here, if the defense feels confident and emboldened that the prosecution doesn't have a case, they could actually force the prosecution to go to trial within 70 days. That's Comey's right.
All right, Laura Jarrett first. Laura, great to have you here. I want to bring in Barrett Berger. He's a former federal prosecutor. Is a former federal prosecutor at Columbia University. Barrett, thanks so much for joining us here on Top Story. You've seen the case so far. What do you think about it?
Well, I think there's still a lot we don't know about the government's evidence. I mean, if you look at the indictment, it is incredibly bare bones, right? It's only a few paragraphs long. It gives no information about the context, what the evidence is that the government presented to the grand jury, exactly what the statements are and what context the statements were made. So we need to learn a lot more about the substance of these charges before we can understand the strength of them. I think what's most troubling is the process by which this indictment was obtained. The fact that you had career Republican-appointed attorneys that declined to prosecute this, that said there's not enough evidence here for that, that is incredibly striking. The fact that the president had to bring in one of his own self-appointed criminal defense attorneys, put her in this position in order to secure an indictment, tells me that there may not be too much strength to the charges here.
You know, usually when we have our legal eagle here, They always remind us that 95% of cases brought by U.S. attorneys are won by the federal government. They usually don't bring bogus cases. They usually, are measured. Do you think this is much different?
Well, look, let's be clear. All we have right now is an indictment, and it's a much easier standard to get an indictment. You don't have to be unanimous. You only have to get 12 grand jurors to agree to this. And also, it's not an adversarial process. Only the prosecutors are putting forth evidence. They can put forth whatever evidence in the grand jury they want. There's no defense counsel there to put forth contrary evidence. So the fact when we get to trial, we're going to have a higher burden of proof. They're going to have to prove this beyond a reasonable doubt. And Comey will have a chance to present a rigorous defense. I think the government is going to be really held to its paces. Comey is represented by an incredibly well-respected defense attorney, Pat Fitzgerald. And it seems like they will have some very strong arguments, both pre-trial and once they get to trial as well.
Yeah, Barrett, this indictment was signed by only one U.S. attorney, the prosecutor in this case, Lindsay Halligan, praised by Attorney General Pam Bondi. Let's put it on the screen here. Bondi writing, this was a big week at the Department of Justice. Our EDVA talking about the Eastern District of Virginia. U.S. Attorney Lindsay Halligan did an outstanding job. We will continue to fight for accountability, fairness, and the rule of law because of the American people deserve nothing less. We want to remind people Halligan, from what we understand, has never prosecuted a case and presented the case to secure Comey's indictment just 3 days after she got the job. Is this unprecedented? Can she still win this case?
It is beyond unprecedented that, number one, it's unprecedented for the U.S. attorney, him or herself, to be the one to present the case to a grand jury. Usually this is done by a line prosecutor, but particularly for her to present this case to the grand jury on her 4th day of work with no prior experience as a prosecutor raises so many questions about how they're actually going to prosecute this case once they get to court. Now, remember, before they get to a trial, they're going to have some serious hurdles to overcome. The defense here is going to have some potentially very strong motions for vindictive prosecution, selective prosecution. If the judge in this case is swayed by the arguments that this was a case that was directed for political means, for vengeance, for revenge, this case may be dismissed before we actually get to a jury trial.
Okay, Barrett, so great to have you on Top Story. We thank you for being here. We want to move on now to the wake of that shooting at the ICE facility in Dallas. New video out of New York garnering attention online as well, showing an ICE officer pushing a woman to the ground. The altercation coming at a time when, as you know, tensions over immigration enforcement are coming to a boiling point in cities across the U.S. NBC's Priscilla Thompson has this report.
The confrontation happening inside a Manhattan immigration facility, where ICE agents move in to detain a man after an asylum hearing. Later, his wife, Monica Moretta, telling an ICE agent her hair had been pulled. The agent then lashing out, slamming her into a wall before shoving her to the ground. Moretta, who was from Ecuador, telling Telemundo, I've lived like this back in my country, she said. Coming here to the United States, I thought I'd feel protected. DHS says the agent has been relieved of his duties, saying his conduct in the video is unacceptable. Another tense moment in Maryland, an arrest in the middle of the street. At one point, the ICE officer's weapon falling to the ground. Tonight, DHS says the suspect illegally entered the U.S. from El Salvador and has multiple previous arrests, including first and second-degree assault. And in Des Moines, Iowa, the school superintendent, Ian Roberts, now detained.
There is much we do not know. What we do know is that Dr. Roberts has been an integral part of our school community since he joined over 2 years ago.
DHS tells us Roberts has a final order of removal and a prior weapons charge. All as we're now learning new details about the shooting in Dallas, where authorities say a gunman targeted ICE agents. This video shows ICE agents rushing towards vans to rescue detainees under fire.
All right, Priscilla joins us tonight. Priscilla, you have some new reporting on that Manhattan incident?
Yeah, Tom, while ICE has relieved that agent of his duties because of his treatment towards Moretta, they are standing by their detention of her husband, saying that he was undocumented and that he had a previous arrest for assault. Tom.
Okay, Priscilla Thompson, we thank you. We have a major update on the shooter who killed 4 people and himself at an office building in Midtown Manhattan earlier this year at the NFL headquarters. A medical examiner releasing autopsy results saying the unambiguous diagnostic evidence shows 27-year-old Shane Tamura was suffering from low-stage CTE when he opened fire at the Park Avenue location, holding multiple officers, including the NFL headquarters, which authorities say Tamura was targeting. Attached to his body was the message, quote, "Please study brain for CTE. I'm sorry." For more on that and what we know, I want to get over to NBC's Aaron McLaughlin. So, Aaron, you know, we knew he had a history of mental illness. It is now confirmed he had some CTE?
Yeah, that's right. We're hearing unambiguous diagnostic evidence of low-grade CTE, that according to the New York Medical Examiner. And this is significant because we also know that Tamura played high school football, and there's a growing body of research connecting high school football, high school contact sports to CTE. There was a study published in JAMA in 2023 that was looking at 152 brains of deceased athletes who were symptomatic, finding that 41% of those athletes had CTE. And there's also new research coming out of the National Federation of High School Association that it's estimated that 300,000 high school athletes in contact sports suffer from at least one concussion. I was speaking to a friend of Tamura not too long ago. He was telling me that he was aware of Tamura suffering from at least one concussion during high school football. He said that he went very hard at practice. And what CTE experts are saying is this is a warning shot to parents and teenagers, coaches across the country in some of these contact sports that are very young, potentially hitting their head repeatedly. And they're recommendations out there since 2019 that these parents, these coaches cut back on the amount of contact sports that these kids are playing. Now, how the CTE diagnosis played into the overall mental health picture of Tamura prior to this mass shooting, well, that we do not know.
Okay. Aaron McLaughlin versus Aaron, we thank you for that. Now to some exclusive reporting about the escalating tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela. NBC News has learned that the U.S. could be planning drone strikes inside the South American nation. This comes after the Trump administration launched 3 strikes against boats they said were coming from Venezuela, killing 17 people who they allege were members of cartels trafficking drugs to the U.S. NBC's Gabe Gutierrez joins us tonight from the White House with his new reporting. Gabe, what do we know about these proposed operations inside of Venezuela?
Well, Tom, NBC News has learned that U.S. military officials are drawing up options to target drug traffickers inside Venezuela, possibly in a matter of weeks. That's according to 2 U.S. officials familiar with the planning and 2 other sources familiar with the discussions. The sources say that the president has not approved any of the plans yet, which include drone strikes targeting drug labs. The Trump administration says it has blown up boats near Venezuela, as you mentioned, that were used by drug traffickers. And a senior administration official tells NBC News that Middle Eastern allies have served as intermediaries in talks with Venezuela, and that the country's leader, Nicolás Maduro, has spoken to these intermediaries about concessions he would be willing to make to stay in power. The official would not specify which countries are acting as intermediaries beyond saying that they are allies. Now, what we're hearing from the Venezuelan government, it's denied the drug trafficking allegations, and Maduro says the U.S. wants to force him from power. Now, his government did not immediately respond to our reporting about the possible strikes inside Venezuela, but Maduro has been warning Venezuelans about what he perceives as a huge threat from the U.S., and he's called for increased training for volunteer militias, something that President Trump has even joked about on social media, Tom.
All right, Gabe Gutierrez first. Gabe, we thank you. We're back in a moment. This is a wild story. A group of high school parents outraged tonight after they said their daughters were forced to crawl on a track in the heat for their majorette team, resulting in severe burns and blisters. Yeah. Plus, my interview with the president of Iran just 3 months after those American strikes on nuclear facilities in his country, what he says about reports of new construction on another secretive site. And wild video at the Ryder Cup after a power line exploded, sending crowds running at the famed golf tournament. Stay with us. We are back now with a disturbing report out of Indiana. Parents outraged after they say an exercise for a dance team left their daughter with severe burns and hospitalized. NBC News obtaining a message from the coach saying she's proud of the dancer's determination. NBC's Maggie Vespa has the details.
These photos show the second-degree burns that Travis Piegler says left his 14-year-old daughter hospitalized after a high school dance coach ordered her to do bear crawls, walking on her hands and feet around a scorching track.
It's child abuse.
You think it's child abuse?
Absolutely.
The Indianapolis dad and his wife Stacy telling NBC News it happened at last week's Warren Central High School majorettes practice. The high that day, 89 degrees.
I just couldn't imagine. I'm like, why would she think that was okay to do?
The family says the coach later sent parents this message saying your dancer may come home with some blisters on their hands, writing, I am so proud of their effort and determination, then sending tips on caring for blisters and apologizing, adding, please know it was never my intention for them to experience pain. The coach not responding to NBC's request for comment. NBC News spoke with a second mother who says her daughter was also injured and sent these photos. The school district telling us it is treating the matter with the utmost care and that the safety and well-being of its student athletes is its top priority. The family showing us this email, which the district would not comment on, from the school's principal saying once we're able to confirm a new coach or sponsor, we will share updated information right away.
These are girls. They're not Army Rangers, Navy SEALs. They're not a football team. They're not none of that. This is dance.
All right. With that, Maggie joins us tonight from Chicago. Maggie, that father said he considers this to be, quote, child abuse. That's obviously a criminal charge. Have these families gone to the police?
Tom, they have. Both the Pieglers, who you just heard from, and that other mother that we talked to, who we spoke about in the piece, say they went to Indianapolis police, and they also went to the state's Department of Child Services. Now, police tell us they're confirming that they got the report, but they're not saying much else about the investigation. And it's worth noting no charges have been filed in this case. DCS just flat out not commenting. And finally, it's also worth noting the parents in both families have hired their own attorneys. Tom.
Okay. Maggie, we thank you. Still ahead on Top Story. Breaking news tonight in the Jimmy Kimmel saga. The owners of dozens of ABC stations making a major decision about whether to put him back on the air. Plus, BMW issuing a park outside recall for nearly 200,000 vehicles. We'll tell you why and which cars are affected. But first, Top Story's top moment, and this one took us by surprise. At an event for Bonvoy members at Marriott World Headquarters in Bethesda, the chairman of the board and grandson of the hotel chain's founder telling the audience how the hotel chain and his last name is actually pronounced. Take a listen.
She was a teacher out there. She had a student named Elliot, and he kept calling her Mrs. Marriott. And she finally sat Elliot down one day and she said, Elliot, how do you pronounce your name? He said, Elliot. He said, that's right. It's not Elliot. It's Elliot. It's the same way with Marriott. It is not Elliot Marriott. It is Elliot Marriott. And so the correct way to say it is actually Marriott.
Okay, I don't know if you could hear it there, but it's Marriott like Elliot, not Marriott, Marriott like Elliot. Okay, who knew? It's so weird. Stay with us. More news on the way. We are back now with Top Stories newsfeed. We start with the major reversal from media companies Sinclair and Nexstar announcing they will be putting Jimmy Kimmel Live back on the air. The companies, which own dozens of local stations across the country, pulled the show off the airwaves last week. Sinclair saying earlier today that its decision was, quote, independent of any government interaction or influence. Kimmel returned to ABC earlier this week after he was preempted over comments he made about Charlie Kirk. Scary moments at the Ryder Cup on its opening day of the golf tournament in Long Island. Take a look at this. Video shows the moment of fire in a tree. Moments later, a power line explodes, sending the crowd running for cover. It happened as people were waiting to enter Bethpage State Golf Course earlier this morning. No word on what caused the fire or if anyone was hurt. Pretty strange. And BMW issuing a recall for nearly 200,000 vehicles due to a fire risk. Owners are being told to park their cars outside and away from buildings over concerns vehicles could short circuit and erupt into flames. The recall impacts 7 models manufactured from 2019 to 2022. To find out if your car is impacted, you go to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration website. Okay, and a passing to note here, the youngest member of the Tuskegee Airmen has died. Lieutenant Colonel George Hardy was just 19 when he flew his first combat plane over Europe with the Tuskegee Airmen. America's first black military pilots. The Tuskegee Airmen National Office saying he flew 21 combat missions during World War II and served during the Korean and Vietnam Wars. Hardy died late Thursday night at the age of 100. We thank him and his family for their service. Okay, here in New York, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressing the UN General Assembly today, touting the progress his country has made in its war against Hamas. But the speech got off to a rocky start with dozens of delegates getting up and walking out of the hall.
Please, order in the hall. Please, order in the hall.
Netanyahu delivering an impassioned defense of Israel's battles against its enemies in the Middle East, using a map to sketch out what he calls Iran's terror axis, and giving the assembly a pop quiz. Netanyahu said he ordered loudspeakers to broadcast his address into Gaza in hopes that the hostages still trapped in the enclave might hear his message. The speech coming as Israel presses on with its offensive in Gaza City. Today, Doctors Without Borders announcing they're suspending their work in the city, saying it's now too dangerous for them to render medical care in the area. Netanyahu's speech coming just 2 days after Iran's president made his case to the world body, holding up a book with the words "killed by Israel," containing pictures of Iranian women and children killed in the bombings. But his nation suffering a major setback just today. The UN Security Council voting not to put off sanctions on his country imposed for not cooperating with the UN nuclear watchdogs. Earlier today, I had the opportunity to sit down with Iran's president to discuss those sanctions, the Iran nuclear program, and possible talks with the U.S. This is a portion of that interview conducted with a government translator. NBC News, though, has reviewed the translation independently.
Let's get to the news of the day and the potential snapback sanctions. Why won't Iran allow UN inspectors to inspect all the bombed-out nuclear facilities?
This is the news that they portray to you folks. We have come to an agreement with the IAEA in a specific framework, and in the framework that we had come to an agreement over with the European Troika to reestablish trust with the agency, to give them the necessary opportunities to conduct inspections, in addition to having access to enriched material. In all of these frameworks, we were ready to adhere to our commitments. And it is the United States that doesn't want to enter this framework, doesn't want to embark on a path of peace and stability. And before reaching this point, as easily, they tore up the JCPOA.
But to be clear, your country will allow all the UN inspectors to all of the nuclear facilities that were bombed out. I just want to be clear on that.
These have already been talked about at a time when they were going to delay the snapback mechanism. They were going to begin the inspections, but unfortunately the issue is that they do not wish to embark upon this path.
If the votes don't go your way and the snapback sanctions come back, will you ban the UN inspectors from Iran?
If they accuse us now falsely that we're not allowing them to inspect our nuclear installations, how do they think that this will be realized after the implementation of the snapback mechanism? We have allowed them to conduct the inspections within the frameworks of international laws, as well as the Non-Proliferation Treaty, to which we have been a signatory. They didn't want to do this and move according to this framework.
Mr. President, I'm not sure if you've seen the reports today, but there is this new report in the Washington Post. It shows a satellite image. This is the Pickaxe Mountain. And it's alleging that right now Iran is building yet another secret nuclear facility. What do you say to this?
If they are really telling the truth, we have come to an agreement most recently with the IAEA. They can come and inspect on the ground. To put something out based on purported satellite photography, it's not pertinent. In order to create frameworks that are not based in reality and fact, would it not be easier and much more tangible and verifiable to have inspections inspections in person on the ground, but they wish to build a certain construct in order to make the world accept that we are moving towards the path of weaponization, and we are seeking nuclear weapons. We have announced time and time again, relentlessly, that we are not seeking nuclear weapons.
Where exactly is that roughly 900 pounds of enriched uranium right now that is publicly unaccounted for?
That's not very difficult. With the IAEA, the inspectors can come and conduct the needed inspections and inspect the targeted sites and verify anything that needs to be verified. We were under the auspices and the inspections, the most stringent regimes, keep in mind, of inspections. But unfortunately, these international entities failed to do the right thing. But it's not a difficult thing. It's not a very challenging thing. In order to verify and conduct inspections, why is it that they're not taking advantage of the opportunity and being present on the ground to do so?
President Trump says, why are you seeking nuclear power if you're sitting on all that oil? What do you say to that?
Well, you see, nuclear energy is not just for nuclear weapons. A lot of diagnostic tools and imaging tools in medicine, which is my professional field, we do need nuclear energy.
There is this report I just showed you about this new, some are alleging, secret nuclear facility. Do you worry that more war is coming to Iran?
Well, you see, we're not afraid of war. We do not seek war. President Trump has said that his administration has come to create peace, but the path that they have embarked upon will set fire to the entire region. It cannot just be that you conduct an aerial sortie with 100 aircraft, maybe, and bomb away at certain targets.
I'm going to ask you it in a different format. Is Iran preparing for more war?
We have never started a war. We will never be starting any wars, but whomever attacks us, we will do our utmost to give them the strongest answer. We will certainly augment our capabilities on a daily basis so as to prevent anyone from attacking us.
I understand that you were injured in some of the bombings. Can you tell our American viewers exactly what happened to you during the bombings?
This is again one of these comportments that would be highly illegal and immoral, but they're allowed to do that. They hit us because they were seeking to martyr us like everyone else. We are not afraid of death and martyrdom. We have lived our lives.
You mentioned you're a doctor, so I'll ask you as a doctor, where exactly were you injured? There was reports you were injured in your leg. Is there any scars that you bear that you can show us?
It wasn't anything special. We can just say that it was a hematoma formed in the region of the knee. We drew out the needed liquid and blood, and after that, we got over it.
Some have said there were up to 21,000 people arrested in Iran after the bombings. What do you say to that allegation?
I don't have off the top of my head a specific number because that's the judiciary in charge of these such matters. But as you mentioned earlier, certain intelligence weaknesses, the foreign enemy perhaps has succeeded in fooling certain internal entities with monetary prizes, if you will, incentives of different types. But to the extent that we were capable, we have tried to overcome that. But to speak of numbers of 21,000 or 25,000, I highly doubted that that's an accurate number.
The way we are sitting right now, would you sit across from President Trump like this to negotiate, to talk to him?
Well, you see, the challenge is not really sitting down and talking in person. President Trump says Iran must not reach nuclear weapon capability. We are certainly ready. We fully agree. We do not wish to reach such an objective. Let's tear down the wall of mistrust and distrust so that we can establish that our interlocutor is being sincere.
In the spirit of diplomacy, is there any message you have for Benjamin Netanyahu?
Netanyahu doesn't need a message. In the eyes of the world, in the eyes of the International Criminal Court, he has been condemned for his comportment and crimes. What he has done and acts he has committed, what have children done? Why has he prevented them from food, water, medicine, formula? What kind of humanity is this that we've built in the world, that in the face of all of these countries that exist throughout the world, men, women, young, old, they are killing everyone indiscriminately, and those they don't kill via weapon systems, they are starving them to death and destroying their homes on top of their head. How can you talk to such entities? If Netanyahu is truly pretending to be a decent human being, he should return to the most fundamental framework of human behavior.
Last week marked the 3-year anniversary of the death of Mahsa Amini in the custody of your nation's morality police. The reason she was detained was the hijab law and requirements of women to wear a hijab in public. At the time, you spoke out against what happened to her. You spoke out publicly against what happened to her. Where do you stand right now on whether women should wear the hijab?
My position hasn't changed. I'm the same human being with the same beliefs, with the same ideologies. Human beings have a right to choose. And the type of management, if you will, oversight that we had in our country at that time on that specific subject matter was less than appropriate. Part of the problem is that, yes, we didn't have appropriate management of our internal issues and implementation, but the rest of it is also the world blowing things out of proportion when it comes to Iran. As you mentioned, I took very crystal clear positions in speeches that I gave in certain places and mosques. I clearly said this should not have occurred. But undeniably, the way the world behaved in the aftermath of such a death, the Europeans, the United States, even the United States became so hot over this topic that passed a law in the U.S. Congress. Really, one human life means all of that to you, and of course, each human life is priceless. But then it doesn't match with the rest of their comportment. On a daily basis, hundreds of people are being killed in Lebanon, in Gaza, all over Palestine, in Yemen and Syria. Yet no one bats an eye. Why? These are less human beings. What America and the Europeans have done is portrayal that is unfounded. We, of course, disagreed with what occurred, and our heart bleeds. However, what they did, they blew things out of proportion. They put things under the microscope to serve their own purposes.
And you can watch our full interview with the Iranian president on NBCNews.com. All right, coming up tonight on Top Story, marking 1 year since Hurricane Helene. Parts of hard-hit North Carolina still working to rebuild after the deadly storm caught much of the region off guard. We speak with the community in Asheville where the scars of the storm still remain visible. We are back now with the heartbreak from Hurricane Helene still lingering 1 year later. The monster storm unleashing devastating floods across much of the South, catching parts of North Carolina completely off guard. More than 100 people killed in the Tar Heel state alone. NBC's Kathy Park reports tonight from Asheville, where some are still frustrated by the slow pace of recovery.
In western North Carolina, the scars of Hurricane Helene remain raw 1 year later.
Trying to make it work in a camper, staying with family.
The Hiders have been living in this camper with their 4 kids for months after losing everything in the floodwaters. Forced to start over, their family's path forward has stalled, partly due to what they say is a backlog of other storm victims and funding delays.
All the people that we need for grading and road work, they're all busy.
Operation Hilo has been helping many displaced by Helene.
How many families right now are still struggling and dealing with housing instability?
Thousands. We have thousands. For every one that you help, you have 5 waiting in the background saying, when is it my turn?
Ashley Pogalt is one of them. She and her family watch their home wash away.
Oh my God. We can't rebuild our home until we restore access.
we can't afford to do it financially, both the house and the bridge.
Helene's impact on North Carolina is close to $60 billion, according to the state. More than $8 billion in federal and state dollars have gone into disaster relief. But beyond the staggering costs, recovery is starting to show results in some areas. The historic Biltmore Village has reopened. Asheville's water system, crippled by Helene, is being built back stronger. And in the hard-hit River Arts District, signs of life.
This is all the stuff that was inside.
We met Lucius Wilson outside his destroyed brewery last year.
My community needs help. We need help.
Now, while repairs are far from over, hope is back on tap.
It's kind of amazing to see it back where it is. This is our new normal.
An unfinished recovery, but a new future on the horizon. Kathy Park, NBC News, Asheville.
Okay, Kathy Park, our thanks to you. We're going to head overseas now for Top Stories Global Watch. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer announcing that citizens and permanent residents will now need a digital ID card to work in the UK. Starmer says the cards will help curb illegal immigration and help secure Britain's borders. Civil rights groups are pushing back on the plan, arguing the IDs infringe on civil liberties. Opposing lawmakers also voicing concerns about data security, with the cards being stored on a database on smartphones. And while video of the aftermath of Super Typhoon Ragasa, people in Macau were actually seen fishing in the streets. Look at this. Video shows floodwaters with fishing nets and buckets to collect massive fish, some even showing off their monster catches. The powerful storm left behind a trail of destruction after slamming Taiwan, Hong Kong, and parts of mainland China. And Brazilian skateboarder defying gravity and shattering records, skating down a 22-story building. Check this out, 50-year-old Sandro Dias barreling down a nearly 230-foot ramp on the side of the building, reaching speeds of up to 64 miles per hour. The stunt breaking 2 Guinness World Records for tallest drop-in and fastest speed on a skateboard on a temporary quarter pipe. Okay, congrats to him. That does it for us. We thank you for watching Top Story. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way. We thank you for watching, and remember, stay updated on breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or watch live on our YouTube channel.